Hi guys, and welcome back to another fly fishing video. Now this is part 2 of a 2-part video. So if you haven't seen the first part, I suggest you pause here and check out the first part. I'll put a link up in the corner there. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name's Lindsay and I make fly fishing and fly tying videos to help encourage you to get out and give fly fishing a go. I don't usually present fly fishing videos in rooms like this. This is where I stayed last night after Ian and I's practice day yesterday. Now, the practice day went relatively well. We came back. I can tell I'm getting older because I was absolutely knackered. I got my kit in order and then I went pretty much straight to bed. So I didn't even go to the bar for a beer. I was very good. So I woke up this morning. A little bit of buzz. It's always really exciting to be going into a match, regardless of how many times you've done it. And the Army Spring Match, it's one of my favourites. I've done it for over 30 years now and I really enjoy it. It's great to get in the boat. The guys are great banter. A lot of the whole idea of the Spring Match actually is to bring in new Army rods. So people from across the Army come along and they get to try out fly fishing, and where we can, we try and pair these new people up with more experienced anglers. Some unlucky guy is going to get me, of course, but I do my best to try and compete and encourage the novice to get into fly fishing. Now, I felt a bit sorry for them yesterday because it was tough going. The wind prevented it being what I would call a bumper spring. But today the wind's supposed to be a lot less, and if that's the case and I can get my boat partner onto the bank, I think he's going to get plenty of fish today. Anyway, we'll see what the day brings. Without further ado, let's get into it. So you have your plan, you've prepared your little black box of comp day flies and marked up your map with your preferred areas. What can go wrong? Well, everything. There is a saying in the military, no plan survives contact, which simply put means that regardless of how well you're prepared, there are other variables in play. Your boat partner, this can play a huge part in your day, and it is best to get off on the right foot. Agree your plan of action, the locations you intend to fish, and the methods you're going to use. Of course, it is a competition and you can't share everything. A sudden change in conditions, a quick drop in temperature or a sudden rise, a change of wind direction can often put the fish off or move them to another location on the reservoir. The fish do get a vote. Sometimes they're just not in the mood to feed and you won't get a take no matter what you do. Last but not least is for some reason on match day you can, and I am guilty of this, make stupid decisions. You heard a rumour at the breakfast table that someone had found fresh fish which you don't have on your map. What do you do? What do you do? My advice is always stick to your plan, at least for an hour. If it's falling flat on its arse, then is the time to make the change. Consider all the information you have gathered and come up with a plan B. The competition today is being fished to loch-style international rules, and I will put a link to these in the video description below. The main points then. You're fishing from a drifting boat where the use of a drogue is allowed. This is effectively an underwater parachute to slow the boat down. You must fish in front of the boat. When your line is behind the boat, you're no longer fishing but trawling. This is not allowed. Flies and hooks then. Hooks cannot exceed 5/8 of an inch, with the maximum length of flies being 15/16.
There are several other important rules that you should familiarise yourself with if you want to get into competition fishing. There are also fishery-specific rules, such as out-of-bounds areas and which species can be taken. The rule here at Rutland is that all brown trout must be returned. Guys, if you are getting some value or a little entertainment from the videos, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. It's absolutely free and you can unsubscribe at any time. I would really appreciate your support. The two areas I had in competition was from Shooty Bush on the Nottingham Bank all the way to the harbour. The other area being the Whitwell frontage and Sykes Lane. The reason I chose to start at Nottingham Bank was the wind was blowing hard into the bank, which would stop any bank anglers getting access to the fish, which were exceedingly close to the bank.
Hey, first bird's in the boat. 10:09 that is, mate.
I had not discounted Sykes Lane, but it was my number 2 choice. It took a little while, but eventually my partner, got into the first fish of the day, and I quickly followed with a couple of others to take us up to 3 fish very quickly to the boat. I managed another one to take our total to 4 fish to the boat, but we were almost an hour and a half into the competition, and speaking to other anglers on that bank, it was not going particularly well. I made the decision to travel across to Sykes Lane. On arriving at Sykes Lane, Charlie Will was packing his kit up, having reached his 12 fish limit, and Ryan Bull, the army captain, was only waiting on one more fish. I had made a tactical error on my start point, but it was always time to make a regain. With a little over 5 hours left in the match, I knew I was capable of still getting to my limit. I just had to buckle down and concentrate on the fishing. I decided to switch from the DI3, which the lads had been catching their fish on, to a 12-foot slow tip. The weather was starting to warm up and there was lots of buzzers coming off the water. This proved to be a stroke of genius as the fish just kept on coming.
Yes,
not to be left behind, was also boating his share of the fish. A few minutes before 3 p.m. I finished my 12 fish limit. This gave me a chance to put all my effort into my boat partner. I immediately offered up my rod, line and cast, and Ooman used it to great effect, boating several more fish. The fish were sitting in very shallow water, and when anglers start to catch these fish, it brings competition boats from all over. Some of the lads are not very experienced and they were coming in at full revs, spooking all the fish. This inevitably put the fish off from that area, and I made the decision to take Ooman back across to the Nottingham Bank. The skies were getting darker and we were going to get some rain.
Well, that's day 1 of the competition over for me. I managed to finish at 3 o'clock, but it wasn't all plain sailing. So I had 2 areas, as I said this morning, and the first area was Nottingham Bank, which I was kind of banking on producing. A lot of boats though went into Church Bay initially. I came the other side of the church, but it did take us a while to get into sport. And Ooman, my boat partner, he was first blood, so he got the first fish. And shortly after I got a fish, and I thought, oh well, you know, it's working out. Maybe it's just a bit slower than yesterday. But after about an hour and a half, we only had 3 fish in the boat, and it was time to go to area 2. Now, you can imagine how discouraging it is when you arrive at your second spot to see a couple of anglers sat on their hands, and that was the case. I got up there, Charlie Will had just finished, and Ryan Bull was only waiting on one fish. And it took a long time for me to work out how to catch the fish. Unfortunately, and this is the worst thing about competition fishing, when you've actually found fish, everyone swarms you. Now the fish are in 2 or 3 foot of water, and that much boat activity is going to put them off or scatter them, and that happened. So word got out that a couple of boys had finished and the boats arrived as an armada, more or less. But as is anglers' wont, they stay for an hour. If they're not getting the fish, they move off, and eventually I got to a point where there was only a couple of boats to contend with, and I managed to wickle out the rest of my fish. And my partner Human, he managed to get a couple as well, so that's great guns. He's currently on 7, and we've come back to Nottingham Bank because it has really quietened off over at Sykes Lane, and we're hoping that the fish we picked up here early have awoken, if you like. So when I practiced yesterday, we never got to Nottingham Bank till late, and there was plenty of fish to be had between 4 and 5 o'clock. So we're hoping it's going to be the same today. We've come back to the area, and we're hoping that it's going to switch on for Human and he can pick up his last 4 fish to finish up. Is it Phil hooked? Phil hooked? I think so, aye. That's why it's giving you such a scrap.
Human fished hard for another few fish and finished on 10, which was an excellent effort on his behalf.
Well done.
Day 2 of the competition saw me paired up with Dave Williams, a fellow Scot, so there would be no language barriers in the boat. It started a bit brighter than it had the previous 2 days, but it was still quite cold. We decided to start where I had finished off the day before, over at Sykes Lane, and when we arrived there was only 2 pleasure boats drifting the area. I was confident that we would get a few fish here. Once again though, the start was very slow, and after an hour and a half we only had 2 or 3 fish in the boats, and I got a little bit itchy feet and ended up motoring back towards Nottingham Bank. And as per the previous day, there was a couple of anglers sat on their hands, and it looks like I'd missed the party once again. I immediately got into a couple of fish in Church Bay, but once again it became extremely busy with boats, and then I made the worst decision of the day. After speaking to Paul Calvert, I decided to go up to Barnsdale Road End, which is a significant motor time, which was cutting right into the match hours. We got up there, and after 2 drifts I knew I had made the wrong decision, so it was back down to Sykes Lane to try and finish off our day. With little more than an hour left of the match, I had 6 fish still to come. And then they started to come on, and I slowly but surely started to grind a bag. I lost several in play. I was snapped at one point, but I still felt confident that I could get my limit. As the time started to dwindle down, I reached 11 fish, which I was very grateful for. And I thought the last one would come. Even on the very last cast, I believed I would get there. Sadly, it wasn't to be, and I finished the match on 11. That's the end of yet another spring match. If you want to get better at fly fishing, then in my humble opinion there is no better way to increase your skill levels and knowledge about fly fishing than competition. I get that competition fishing is not for everyone. Fly fishing is different things for different people. I would, however, urge you to give it a go. You never know, you might like it, and I can guarantee you will learn something. If you have enjoyed this video, I suspect you might like the one on the screen now. And I'll see you all in the next one.